Episode one. Daragh Walsh, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Um, Daragh, this is the first ever of these podcasts, and the mission of sort of adventure that I'm going on is to kind of have conversations with people who I feel have done maybe something atypical and have started a project or a company or have gone off on their own and done something sort of interesting. I
Mm.
think you qualify, and I'd love to, for the people that don't know you, have never heard of you before, if you could give us a brief introduction to yourself and what you're doing with yourself now.
Well, I think, what might be interesting for people is that I've taught over 1 million students online. And I think I've had some pretty good lessons throughout that journey over the last maybe 10 years. So we can go back to the start maybe and just try and tease those out as we go through. Because I'm at the other side of where a lot of people might be, not even starting. I'm coming out the other side 10 years later. So, yeah, let's dig in.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe take us back. I think for context for the listeners, for the viewers, Darren and I know each other most of our lives. We went to school together, and I think you had a very typical kind of path. You went to secondary school, you left, you went to university, and you were in sort of a fairly normal tech job in Dublin. So maybe start there and tell us what happened next.
Well, yeah, I think for most of my 20s, I just bounced around. And to be honest, I didn't have any clear direction. I had a couple of false starts, tried accountancy, just wasn't for me. Went down to Brazil working for an Irish company. But ultimately, look, I got to 28 and I didn't have that much to show for myself, to be honest. And I had friends in London who were working in finance and really pulling ahead, and I felt like I was slipping behind. So I kind of set myself this deadline. Look, 30 years old, I can't be sitting here in this cubicle. I need to, you know, move my ass. I need to do something. And so that was just a kind of a deadline that I set for myself, but that started to create a lot of urgency. And I think what was interesting when I look back on the setup, why I really was so motivated, is you have this fear. It's really driven by fear that if I don't do something, my friends are going to pull ahead and I'm going to be stuck in this cubicle for the rest of my life. So emotionally, I think it was a lot more fear the reason I got started. Yeah.
Okay, and when you say you got started, like I remember going back, we all read the 4 hour work week. I feel
Yeah.
like I picked it up, put it down. It felt like you kind of picked that book up, and it became almost like a manual for life. It was like a trigger moment. Is that true?
Yeah, to me it made like instant sense. You have this internet that you can leverage, you can work from anywhere if you can figure it out. And I think that book was written almost 20 years ago. And it's actually incredible if you look back at kind of the path that the author laid out. I mean, it's still going today. It's still a developing trend, this whole remote work, you know, digital nomad thing. It's become um, its own genre. And so, yeah, I think like a lot of people who got started online, that was the key book that really got me interested. Another one would have been Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Key advice there is, if you want to be rich, you want to be free, you got to start your own business. You can't be an employee. So those books were definitely, yeah, that really kind of got me going. How I actually got started then, so I had this 2 year deadline, and I'd say for a year of that, I was rereading the 4 hour work week, like looking inside the pages. The magic's in here, like deep in page 69. But what you realize, and I listening to podcasts and different books, and you realize you just have to do something. So the platform that really came up for me was Fiverr, and
Can
it's
I-
a
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
yeah.
So that realization is really interesting, right? When you stopped and recognized that you needed to stop consuming and start
Yes.
creating? Like
Yeah.
what was the impetus for that? Or like, because I think that I can relate to that. And I think there's a
Mm,
lot of people potentially listening that can relate to that, where you have a notion of something you want to do, you start to do a lot of research, and then
mm.
you kind of get stuck in that research. Oh, I don't know enough, or I'm not sure if I can because I need to find out something else about the process, or you kind of make a million excuses, or you
Yeah.
lose the sort of like momentum before you actually begin. So just talk to us a little bit about that moment when you actually made that shift. What was it that made that happen for you?
I still think you have that fear pushing you. You're like, I've set my deadline. I'm no closer to the goal. And the kind of the terrible scenario that I painted for myself is still there chasing me. So I think I went down at different paths and e-commerce and maybe I can build websites and sell them. But I think it was just a real frustration that it was all too complicated. And I needed to start like with something really, really easy where there was no tech involved because I'm not a technical person. So, taking care of payments and all of that stuff. I think it was just frustration, and then I turned to Fiverr because it's like a very simple way to get started.
Okay. And what did you start doing there?
So for anybody that doesn't know, Fiverr is like a freelancing platform, and the whole idea is that you can buy a service for $5. And if you go onto the website, you can just click through all the categories like design, digital marketing, blah, 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 blah. So I went on and I just literally went through category by category, service by service, and I said, there must be something in here I can do. Because at the time I felt like I've no real skills. I don't have anything. It's not like I'm really experienced in something. I'm pretty young. I've no real sellable skills. And so I went through literally every single category, every single service, and I'm getting towards the end, and I'm like, I haven't found anything. This is this is getting bad, like.
Yeah.
And then, but eventually, I did find one, which was people wanted you to comment on their blog, and they would pay $5 for that. So the reason that they wanted that is because they wanted the social proof to look like their site had activity, and that would spur other discussions. Said, well, I can make a comment, I can type a comment, I can do that. So that's really what I started with, and so the broader lesson for other people is you have to evaluate the marketplace, find something that you can do. And then once I was inside that marketplace, what I started to do is look at the other people who were offering the commenting service and then differentiate myself. So I was looking at the reviews, of course, of what the customers were saying, and they were complaining like it was too short or it wasn't relevant comment, or it looked like it was done by a bot or something like that. So
Mhm.
I put in the title of my service, three genuine comments for $5,
Nice.
and I made sure to read the blog and to actually try and give something of value, and I would do it across three different posts on their website. So, of course, this absolutely makes no financial sense. I mean, it can take you quite a long time, and you're only getting $5. But what you're building up is that experience of selling something online. You have
Yeah.
your offer, which is the title. You have a description of your offer. You need to do a sales video if you want to get more promoted.
Hmm.
And then there's all the customer service, delivering it on time, making sure you get good reviews. So I think it was a great way for me to just get started. Yeah.
And describe to me your mindset at this point. Like, I guess in hindsight, for me, now that you are, the number one Udemy course globally in digital marketing with millions of students, it makes a lot of sense. But at the time, did you sort of have the foresight that you could get to that level, or you would create content of that scale? Because I think, I remember at the time as a friend thinking, the hell is he doing? This is hilarious. It was we were making fun of you back then. And I guess I'm very curious to hear like what was going on in your mind. Were you aware that this was a lesson that was very important to learn?
I think it's just, you get a sale and that's exciting. It doesn't really matter the value of it. You've proven your thesis that the 4 hour, well, working online is possible. And of course, you know that this is just the entry point. There's going to be better services that you can offer. And then obviously, yeah, there's going to be more automated ways to do this. Potentially, you could build a team and all this. So I was aware that this was an entry point, and and I think it's important. Like I didn't tell anybody about this. I was just doing this on the evenings and weekends after my regular job. So I think people have this fear as well that if you do anything online or anything in life, everybody's going to instantly know about it.
Yeah.
But if like nobody cares and
Nobody
nobody
cares.
asks,
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
cares. And if you think about it, even there's people out there on social media every day putting out content and they're getting no views. Like so it's not like you do something and everybody's talking about it. So I
Yeah.
think that was a common fear that people said to me, are you not worried what people are going to say? And the thing is, again, what's bigger, the fear of people giving me a negative comment or the fear of being like stuck in a cubicle? So,
Yeah.
obviously the fear of doing nothing is bigger. So you're driven forward. That's
Yeah.
kind of
And I
the
and I
basic thing.
think I think remembering that time, as a friend of yours, I think it's very short lived. In fact, the few of us that did watch those videos and did, kind of make fun, the making fun is very short lived. And in actual reality, as soon as you had any traction, suddenly people were saying, Jesus, that's very interesting. And immediately got behind you. Did you feel that?
Well, yeah, I think now, like maybe 10 years later, people are like, oh, yeah, it's great. You work online, you can live anywhere. I'm a bit jealous now, And, but again, at the time, it's not like all throughout my journey I was promoting myself really publicly. I just, kept quiet and that's what I'm doing. And but I guess it is good to hear now when people say something like that, you're living abroad and a bit more sun, the weather's terrible in Ireland. You're kind of like you feel vindicated in a way that you,
Yeah.
you chose the path that was right for you anyway, at
Yeah.
least. So
Awesome. So maybe let's dig into sort of the decision points. So now you sort of, well, let's retake on that. So let's maybe dig into um, what happened next. So you were on Fiverr, you started
yeah,
getting some sales, and you're focusing on commenting on people's blogs. Where did it
yeah.
go from there? How did you go from there to Udemy?
Well, there was a couple of other steps in between. So the next thing was getting a more valuable service. And so what you realize is when you're commenting on people's blogs that um, people commenting isn't the problem. The commenting function works perfectly. The problem is they have no visitors or their website is laid out really badly. So there was another service that I saw someone doing, which was like a video website review. And again, it's like user testing. You just go on to a website, you just click around and you give comments on what you see as just a random visitor. And but then I added a bit more like, okay, well, here's marketing tips. Like this headline doesn't catch my attention. You could redo it like that, or I can't find where to contact you or something like that. So like basic things.
But these were things that you had a qualification to do, or just things that were so patently obvious to you once you were.
So just so obvious, yeah. But
Okay.
people wanted human feedback. They didn't want to just, there was you could put your website into a machine and it would kind of spit out some stuff. But they just wanted human feedback from a genuine human, and they wanted to hear someone's voice just talking through it. Again, it doesn't require any skills, but
Yeah.
it's a service that you can
You
charge a
just
higher price for.
you just needed to be a human. Check.
You d- yeah, and actually there's a whole website called usertesting.com, and you can actually go sign up and that's all you do.
Wow.
So it's interesting. Like I was doing that, and then subsequently, much later on, I saw someone had built a whole business around that, and I was like,
Crazy.
oh, I could have just done that. Because it's yeah. So but then you charge more, so you say, well, it's not $5 now, it's $10. And look, $10 only gets you the home page. If you want extra pages, that's an extra $5 each page. So then you're selling something that's maybe $25, maybe $50 or something. And then I'd combine them, and then eventually I developed out a couple of different services, and I'd be combining them and selling them between each other, things like that.
Packages.
Packages, yeah. So
And
the website's called Fiverr, but actually, even if you go on now, like the services start a lot higher than that. It's really developed even from when I was doing it.
great. And you were working at the same time? You were still working in your job? What were you doing? And how were you finding the balance between the two things? I think a lot of people, when they think about sort of starting a new project, like a business or, something like what you've done, there's a sort of a want to hedge. They want to sit somewhere between the old safe path and the new kind of unwalked path. Just how did you kind of feel about that? How did you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I mean, people say just jump in, but I don't think that's a good idea, really. You kind of have to feel it out, and you go down one path, and you're like, actually, that's not it. So I think starting evenings as weekends is the best approach initially for most things, maybe some not. You just have to go all in. Um, so I was just doing it on the evenings and weekends, and I think particularly because I had a very, very defined service. I knew exactly how long it would take to deliver that service. So I would just build up enough that I could do it like within 24 hours. That was one of my offers. I'll deliver in 24 hours, whereas most people were like 48 hours, 72 hours. So I would just, you can turn off your service as well. If I got too many orders, I just turn it off. So I never let it get too crazy. But because it was such a defined offer and I knew exactly how it was to deliver the offer, how much time it would take me, I was always able to maintain that balance. And yeah, that's the kind of how I managed that.
Okay. So what was your personal life at that point? Was it very, were you super busy, or were you like all in on this, or,
Well,
or were you
it's
were you doing both?
now, yeah, you have to keep in mind, like these things only took 5, 10 minutes to do. So even if I was doing multiple a day, it would be 2 hours maximum, which you could easily do on the evenings and weekends. So it wasn't a huge
Impact.
hassle. I remember around Christmas time one year, like it was Christmas Day, and I was doing an order. I was delivering an order. So I had to sneak off to the bedroom and like bang a couple of these out, because I wanted to keep my score high, and the
Nice.
reviews.
So you were
So,
dedicated from the
but
beginning.
yeah, I just, I felt I wanted to get ahead, and when other people weren't doing it, I was going to do it. But again, it was just minutes here and there. It wasn't like a huge, huge commitment. Again, the point of it, the whole point of the thing was to just have a compelling offer and practice doing that,
Yeah.
practice delivering it, and then having the customer service skills to just make sure you follow through and do it.
And what lessons, I guess, did you learn at that moment? So you've described sort of defining an offer online, building a package, customer service. Like this
Yeah.
is sort of a list of things that are often skills people don't have. And so did you sort of systematically go about learning each one of those things? Does it just come with the territory? Like what advice do you have for people who potentially might be going into this sort of world? How do you acquire those skills?
It just practice. Yeah, I think you're right that these are the fundamentals of business. A lot of it gets lost in hiring teams or accounting and all that stuff. Like that's all back end stuff. I mean, but essentially that's what it boils down to, a compelling offer. And So you look at other people's offers. I mean, you're not in, especially Fiverr, the marketplace is so defined and the categories are so defined and the services are so defined. You just need to check what are the other five guys doing. And you can look at all of their offers, just take the best bits and put it into your offer and maybe try and differentiate yourself a little bit. Look at the reviews, see where the gaps in the market are. Why are people not giving it 5 stars? And then you just make sure that you will do whatever that is to get the 5 star. So I know that in a world like that, a defined marketplace, it's very easy to do that, but it's the same process no matter what market you're in, really.
Okay.
So that's it. Practicing it, yeah, and yeah, so that's it.
Did you do it all yourself? Like all of the like thumbnails and graphics and copywriting, all of that,
Yeah,
was that from the beginning you learned those skills, or how did that work?
yeah. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff to be honest. I mean, like type in the comments. You just type comments. There's no digital skills there really. The video thing, you just watch a YouTube video, learn how to record your screen. That's it. Yeah, copywriting. I would say I really like writing, and to be honest, yeah, that's the fundamental skill under everything I've ever done. You need to write scripts for a YouTube video. You need to write scripts for a uh, even an educational video on Udemy, So I enjoy the writing process and I really enjoy copywriting, like how to write that compelling title. So yeah, I did all of that stuff myself. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so now you're picking up momentum. You're doing Christmas dinner, sneak offs to record content. Are you
Yeah.
making any money at this point? Like, are you actually like supplementing your income, or are you still in a learning phase?
Yeah, no, I was making yeah, I think it was like $16,000 a year if you were to, multiply it forward. So in
Annualize it.
towards the end of, yeah, if you annualized it, that's what I was heading towards. And I thought, well, I'm only doing this on this kind of getting to this point where I quit my job. I said I've built this up enough and I'm only doing this a couple hours a day. If I go full time, obviously I can just increase my income because it's just doing more of what I'm already doing.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of when I decided then to take the leap into full time.
Wow. Okay, and how did that go down with like your friends and family? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I have memories of it, but I think from your perspective, I'd love to hear.
yeah, like my girlfriend, she was supportive because I think she could see how it was working and she could see I was doing the work. My parents, for example, were much, much more skeptical. And even my dad, like, quite aggressively tried to talk me out of it.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't blame him because if he had looked back on my path, I'd spent most of my 20s having no real direction, not finding a footing in anything. Finally, I'd kind of got into a decent tech company, and there was a path up to
Yeah.
maybe management at some point. And so he was like, "What are you doing? Like, this is crazy." And I don't blame him. And
What
for
do you think? Why do you think he was like that? I guess you can understand it, but I'd love you to articulate why do you think he was like that? Because I think that fear is the fear that most people have. It's their self-talk. It's the sort of cultural and sort of societal pressure is probably encapsulated in what your dad said to you. So what did he say?
Well, he just said, look, you're getting on now. I mean, you'll be starting a family soon, and this is completely unproven. You've no track. Well, he didn't say it in so many words, but you know, I had no track record of doing anything myself.
Yeah.
And that's fair. That's fair enough, and that's legitimate. Like there was nothing to point to and say, okay, you've started other businesses before and they've been a success. So yeah, go off and do this thing. But
And
I
what was
think,
your self-talk at that moment then? Like in the face of that very kind of significant pressure from others. And I have been there myself. I know what that feels like. And I've often kowtowed to sort of that pressure, particularly from people around me that love me and want the best for me, who I perceive as
yeah.
being sort of older and wiser. So I'm very curious, like your inner dialogue at that moment, your inner monologue at that moment.
Well, first you've got to see who's giving you that advice. And has my dad ever worked online? No, he didn't even exist when he was growing up. This wasn't even a possibility. So you've got to be careful who you're taking advice from because they have no understanding of this. So you can still listen to them, and sometimes they valid points, but I had proven it to myself first, which was I have the orders coming in. I've made this much money. If I go full time, that's how much money I'm going to make. So there wasn't a huge leap of faith on my part. I'd already proven it to myself. And so, while it made me stop and think when somebody else said it, and actually in hindsight, I'm very grateful that he did because if he had said this stuff to me and I didn't have good answers, then he would have been right. If
Uh-huh.
if if your argument can't stand up to any sort of attack, well then you haven't got an argument.
Yeah.
So I think you should listen to the feedback, and if you can refute it and feel confident in it, then you've got something that you can go forward with.
Mm. Awesome. Awesome. And I think that's the scary sort of like precipice that a lot of people fear. And in actuality, what you're saying is because you sort of hedged and built up slowly over time, you knew well enough that if you continued down that path, it could bear significant fruit. Awesome.
Yeah, well, and there's one other point there is that you are aware that if you stay in a normal job, there is a limited upside. Whereas if you work online, there's really an unlimited upside. So you are aware also that that possibility is there. So it's good to explore that.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because this might be the first time anyone, someone listening has ever contemplated that prospect. So do you want to talk a little bit about the unlimited upside potential of the internet or working online?
Yeah, it's just that you can clone yourself. That's what it is. You can, when I'm teaching online, I'm basically cloning myself and I'm teaching students 24/7, 365. They also can even now add subtitles in multiple languages. So you're cloning yourself. That's what you're doing. So instead of just one Dara working in a company, there's now 100,000 out there. And that's what the internet allows you to do. If you make content, it's out there constantly. People are watching it whenever they want. If you're even to go to like an in-person talk, well, only the people in that room at that time can listen to what you're saying. So that's basically it. I mean, software is a very similar concept that you can just create a solution and people can run it as many times as they want. So it's that same idea of leverage, and that's what the internet allows.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's kind of a fairly profound, non-obvious reality that I don't think many people, even of our generation, have grasped fully. Just how there's a literal, like, endless market of potential buyers behind the screen. So
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Okay. So I guess you've got the self drive. You've got the parents coming in, giving you some reality checks, and you're kind of passing those. Were there any mentors that really stood out around this time in your life that kind of were there to sort of drive you forward and keep you on track?
No. And this is actually another interesting part of my story, maybe that, yeah, the typical advice is you need a network, you need mentors. I still don't have any network and I still have no mentors. But, and so, but what I did look closely at is other people, let's say when we skip on to the next phase, which was Udemy. I was looking very, very closely at what they did, even people in other categories in different topics. And I was trying to take the best bits from those and apply them to myself. Um, And just to hit on that point again about not having mentors, there was like a Udemy instructor conference in San Francisco. I went. It's all about the network. I thought this was going to really blow open a whole new level. But when you go home, what you realize is, you just have to upload videos. That's what you have to do. It's having a network doesn't get the work done. So I think it's really overvalued. Uh, I think, let me clarify, like, I'm just not a naturally good networker. It's a lot
Okay.
of work for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't come naturally to me. If you have that skill, exploit it, but I don't. And so I just focused on what I can do was just work independently and upload videos. That's basically it.
Nice. And I guess, you know, you mightn't have had a mentor relationship, but it sounds like you took advantage of the fact that so much of this advice is just hanging out there, like for all to see across YouTube videos or other Udemy instructors. I think we may have skipped um, that transition from sort of going full time into work in Fiverr to finding Udemy. So Udemy, maybe you could introduce first and foremost.
Well, Udemy is it's an online course marketplace, so it's another marketplace like Fiverr was. So for me initially, that was like, okay, I'm familiar with Fiverr, and then this marketplace model popped up, and it was quite an innovative platform at the time because previously, if you wanted to sell an online course, you would do it through your own channels. You would promote it heavily on social media, or whatever. You'd sell it on the back end of that, and you might have a white label solution, but you'd still need to manage a lot of the tech stuff.
Right.
Whereas Udemy took that all away and they just handled all the technical stuff. And similar to the way YouTube works, you just need to upload videos. That's what your job is. And the other advantage of Udemy then was that they had a large uh, student base already, and it was growing extremely quickly because it was brand new. And so that was an opportunity then for me. And I think this is maybe another important point for people is you've got to, if you want to get into something, you've got to get into something new. Like you'll see people who are complete unknowns on, say, Instagram, and then they exploded on TikTok because it's a new platform. It's a new opportunity. So that's kind of where the opportunity was created for me because there was extremely high demand and no supply. And the way I like to think about it, and the way business people say is like imagine you're outside a stadium, 80,000 hungry people coming out. If you have a burger stand there, you're going to sell a lot of burgers. But it doesn't really matter how good they are. But if you have the best burgers in the world on a quiet street in a quiet neighborhood, you're not going to sell as many burgers. So I would really encourage people to look for like very high demand, very low supply opportunities, and those can be created when new platforms pop up, or maybe it's just a new trend or a new niche or
Yeah.
something like that.
I've seen this on social media a little bit with new formats. So recently, for example, on LinkedIn, they launched vertical video on mobile, and I see distribution of that format skyrocket. People that are kind of
Yeah.
unknowns with sort of marginally good content suddenly getting huge distribution. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be a new platform. It can be an existing platform with a new format, and you jump on that.
Yeah, that's so
Cool.
true.
So now you're on Udemy, and you're still doing website reviews. Like when you made that transition, did you
Yeah.
continue to do more of the same stuff with a bigger audience, or what happened then?
Well, yeah, there was basically I saw another guy making a course, and somehow I had started following him on Twitter. He had set up a kind of quite a smart marketing funnel. I basically went down it, ended up buying his course, which was on Twitter marketing. So I was like, well, he caught me in the funnel, and I bought the
Nice.
course, so he clearly knows something. And when because this was all new, I was like, well, who is this guy? And and then you find out he's living down in Brazil, and you're like, wait, that's what I wanted to do. And so you're like, You're like, well, and then but then I took the course and I was like, well, wait a minute, I could do this. Like, this is not that hard. Like, I could do what this guy's doing and have the freedom, which is ultimately what I wanted. So that was kind of, yeah, that really sparked my, or caught my attention.
So you felt that
So that,
you could learn enough about these social media platforms from a zero base that you could create valuable content. Was that the realization off the back of this guy's course?
yeah, well, I just took it and I was like, okay, well, this is pretty smart. There's some good strategies in here, but this isn't, he's just recording videos and uploading them. And as I said, that's kind of similar to what I was doing on Fiverr. It wasn't that different. It was more structured, more strategic, but a lot of it was just explaining the basics of what Twitter is, what the opportunity is there, how many users they have, so, and then some basic strategies to grow your follower base. And so I thought, yeah, I mean, I could do that. That's not that difficult. You gotta remember that these courses on Udemy are like $10 courses. So people aren't paying €1,000 and being expected to be blown out of the water. Like they're just expecting the basics, some good
Done
quick
well.
tips, and delivered in a good way. So the bar was pretty low. It's a bit higher now, but yeah, that's the entry point was not that difficult. And as I said, because the supply was so low, that even not that great courses were getting a lot of sales.
Okay, so now's when the rubber hits the road, really, I guess, for you. So you started off doing what kind of courses, and then like how many courses did you add to that list, and like talk to me a little bit about how the progression happened. Like, who did you work with, and or like how did you decide on what courses to develop, and then how did you end up sort of being the number one marketing guy on this platform?
Um, well, it's a similar process to what I did on Fiverr, which is the categories are across the top, you go down through them, you check the different courses, you see what the course, read all the reviews. What do people don't like about the course? Then you buy all the courses in a particular topic. Then you take all the best parts of those courses, you put them into yours, and you differentiate your offer a little bit. So it's the exact same process. And when I went through the list, SEO, search engine optimization, was the topic that for me that I was interested in, number one, but also there was very low supply. The courses were extremely complicated. And so my course then was SEO in plain English. That was kind of the title. That was the benefit for people. It's just simple. And, get to the top of Google. That was, another benefit. And so that was my course. I think it was 2 hours long. And yeah, similarly, it just broke down. It took something quite a complex topic and made it simple and gave people like actionable things that they could do to actually implement it. And that was my first course. And the interesting thing about SEO and why I think I was attracted to it again is that it has that leverage. Essentially, what you're doing is funneling people from Google into your website, and that happens 24/7, 365. Google's sending you visitors. So it was a similar leverage that I initially found very interesting. Yeah.
Right. So you're teaching yourself a skill while teaching it to others that will ultimately benefit you in the long run and the business that you're trying to establish online.
Yeah, teaching is the best way to learn. That's
Uh-huh.
what, that's kind of always been my motto. And yeah, I didn't know everything, but I knew you just put it together and you figure it out and you do the hard work for people, make something complex simple, and then they're
Mm.
going to appreciate that.
Awesome. Um, Thinking back over that journey sort of from, tech employee to, I don't know how you describe yourself now. Is it an educator, a creator,
I think teacher is just the simplest word, yeah.
teacher? So making that transition, do you, if you could go back to yourself, maybe at 28, and give a piece of advice, knowing what you know now,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Well, I'd actually go back even further, maybe to when I was 18, and I'd say, look, you've got to identify your limits and find a way to win with the cards you've been dealt. And, what are my limits? I'm not good at maths. I never should have gone down the accountancy route. I'm not good at public speaking or networking or building a team or managing a team. Don't even try. What you need to do is find platforms where you can work independently because that's what you like to do. That's what suits you. So maybe a writer, they can work independently. Kindle ebooks, something like that. Something like Fiverr or something like Udemy, where you're not in the face of customers, you're just delivering the output that they want. And
Yeah,
but it's very, very, very efficient and you can do it at scale. And that's what I would, if I was go back to myself, don't try and change who you are because along the journey, I've really tried to fight some of those things. I've tried to scale out a team and I find that very, very difficult to do. I tried to, network a little bit. Felt like that didn't deliver any value. And haven't really done many podcasts or anything like that because it just seems more valuable to actually deliver make the course. That's
yeah,
what really 80/20. That's what makes a difference.
yeah. Keep the head down, get the work done, let it speak for itself.
Yeah, and just accept who you are.
Yeah,
That's you. I like clicking buttons on my computer. That's what I do. Like that, I don't
yeah,
do anything else.
yeah.
So
Okay. And is there any part of the this journey that you've particularly disliked? Because I think you've obviously found a niche for yourself, something that you enjoy doing and you're good at. So,
yeah.
kudos to you. Are there parts of this adventure that you've been on that were really unpleasant or difficult that you kind of had to overcome?
Yeah, it's always difficult. Yeah, like, well, I think a big part of the struggle was trying to fight who I was. If I just didn't do that, that would have saved a lot of heartache. But the basic thing, what I do, taking complex things and making them simple, that's a very difficult process. You have to keep going back and back and back, and you're like, this is still too complicated. How do I make it simpler? And that process is pretty excruciating, to be honest. Yeah, it's difficult, but at the end of it, when you feel like you've created and it all lines up and it's all completely logical and actionable, then there's great satisfaction in that. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, but I kind of, eventually I like the outcome.
Okay. So the journey isn't necessarily that enjoyable, but the outcome once you're there is worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy the work, but there are times when you just want to give up, say on that particular lecture that you're making or a course that you're making. You're just like I remember, um, and this comes maybe little bit later in the story on Udemy that I ended up connecting. I made that SEO course. Then the biggest instructor on the platform basically reached out to me and said, "Will you make a marketing course kind of for my audience? We'll do a revenue split." And I agreed to that. And then, but it was a 20-hour course. It was like a monster.
So
And
that instructor set the parameters and instructed
yeah,
you to create this content. You weren't
yeah,
sort of in charge of it. Up until that point, how long were your courses? Maximum 2 hours?
3 hours, yeah, maximum.
Okay. So this
So,
is
but
this is this was a
he had
significant
made,
jump in the scale of what you were producing.
yeah, and that took me 3 months to make that course. That was an absolute monster. And I remember about halfway through, I was just like, I can't do this. And I was like, I'll even wait till, like, I think it was on a Friday. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is just so difficult.
So how deep in were you?
So
How much
I'd say
content
it
had
was
you created?
about a month, maybe like 10 hours or maybe 5 hours or, you know, but I remember on a Friday I was like, I give up, basically. And I actually emailed him on the Monday. I said, look, I can't do it anymore. No, first I said, okay, I'll give myself the weekend to think it through. Then I got to Monday and I was like, yeah, I can't do it. And I emailed him and he emailed me back. He's like, just give it a go again. And then like that was all I needed to get me going
One
again.
email. One email.
Just one line, one line. It was just like,
Keep
just said,
going.
just keep going. You'll figure it out. And so, yeah, that got me back on track. But that was actually interesting because that ended up being then my best selling course
That
ever.
is
So
the
that
still
was
still the number one course, right?
still the best. Yeah, still the best. Yeah.
That's amazing. Have you ever spoke to that instructor about that one email? Do you have a mentor
Yeah, I met.
relationship with that instructor
Well,
now?
I met him at this. No, no, he's a very busy guy, and he's. What you realize is, you know, he had a massive impact on me, but I had really no impact on him that much. So, but I did meet him at this instructor conference that I went to, and I thanked him in person, and we took a picture and stuff. But yeah, he's off running multiple businesses, so but he had a very, I think, interesting approach. He was just kind of like, look, that's it, just deliver it. If you don't deliver it, I'm not going to chase you. And he was just like, he had multiple things going at the same time. So um,
And if I remember
I thought,
correctly at the time, he had something in the order of 250,000 students, and you
yeah,
were a relatively unknown on the platform. Is that fair?
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. But I was on the platform is the important thing. And I had produced a course that had high ratings in the topic that he was looking to, have help make a bigger course in. So maybe that's another lesson for people that you can't expect people to come knocking if you've nothing out there.
Yeah,
So you have to put something out there, and then that will attract other people who have bigger ideas than you do.
yeah,
And I think that's critical. Now, saying that, it's not like he just handed me the big win. I actually changed some of I think quite strategically, the SEO and stuff around the course, and it was a little bit of a different vision than he had, but I think it worked much better. And also then I actually made the entire course, put
yeah,
3 months into it. So,
yeah,
don't forget that part
yeah, yeah. The
because that's the
grit,
really important
the
bit.
grit to get through. I wonder the significance of that email, given it was a revenue share. What that one email has returned. With the return on investment of that one line must be fairly substantial for him.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
so okay, and so I think I'd love to kind of understand more about this sort of grind, this like 3 month grind, and like I guess you know, for me as a sort of a newly minted founder, like I'm in the process of trying to start a business and start this podcast, and getting started is like the most important part. You have to be, playing to win, but often you can look at this mountain ahead of you and get very intimidated or disheartened. And
Yeah.
so, you've described you're a month in, you're 5 hours deep, you've got 15 hours to go, and you're completely, you've given up essentially. You get this response to this email, and then you say what to yourself? Like, what was it that drove you through to completion? Because that was a big crossroads in hindsight for you.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I think I did the right thing, which was to just reach out and say I had doubts, and then like literally all it took was one line to get me straight again. So yeah, if you're really struggling to get going, even just someone saying you can do it, you can figure it out. A lot of the time, that's all you need to get you back on track. And What was the question again? I forget.
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand the psychology of it, of the kind of like sticking to it to just continue to like push through even when it's not
Oh, yes, yeah.
fun. Like I want to understand your psychology because I feel like a lot of people could learn from that.
Yeah, breaking it down into more manageable chunks. So I got it down to just make one 10-minute video a day. That was my goal. So breaking it down into that, and then you're like, well, okay, I've got this chapter in the course to do. There's 10 lectures in each chapter, and you're just, you feel like you're starting to make progress. So there's pretty clear milestones there. Um, I guess as well, there was a clear deadline on delivering this course. We'd agreed up front what the deadline was. And I think if I remember, it was around October time, which we intended to launch. And Black Friday is in November, which is a big sales period for online courses.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so I knew that, and I knew he had a big audience. So there was almost a guaranteed outcome if I could deliver. And obviously that made it much easier. Obviously, not everybody has that. But I think if, you know, going back to what we said at the very start is you've got to make the fear of not doing anything bigger than the fear of doing it. So for me, it was that missed opportunity. For me, it was very, very clear. It was tangible. Um, so that was what I kept reminding him. Am I really going to walk away from that? That'd be insane.
Yeah.
So the fear of then powering through was less than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just I'm kind of realizing that goal setting is quite an important part of like some of these major milestones along your way. So, you set the
Yeah.
goal at 28 to prove yourself to the world that you were, capable by 30. And now you've just
Mm.
described how you kind of made an agreement with this instructor to deliver on a deadline. Are goals a big part of the way you think about the world, and how do you set your goals?
Yeah, I think that's it. You have to create that sense of urgency. Otherwise, you won't do anything. Why? I just leave it till tomorrow. I'll leave it till tomorrow. There has to be something like that. Um, yeah, I think goals are important, but processes are probably better. Like the 10-minute video a day, or I agree to go to the gym 3 times a week, no matter what. Like those type of things I think that's my goal, not necessarily the outcome, because the outcome you can't always control, but you can do that. Yeah. So I think goal setting is very important, and urgency is important too. Yeah.
And how do you go about doing that? Like, can you talk to us a little bit about your goal setting like method? Like, do you
I don't
write
know
it
if I
down on a
really
sheet of
have.
paper? Like, do you speak it out loud to your friends and family? Like, is the accountability just saying, "I write this down, I've decided it, that's it"? Uh, do you have somebody to help you stay accountable? I'm just curious about setting the goals in the first
Yeah.
instance and then keeping yourself accountable to them.
Well, I do. I mean, now I do at the start of the year. It's like basically what I'd like the year to look like and the things I'd like to do. And then maybe at the end of every quarter, maybe every month, I'll be checking in and seeing really how am I doing with this. And I have a thing, there's some countdown thing. There's only like 200 days left in the year or something like that. And you're like, oh, Jesus, I better, get my ass in gear here. So that's on a more like much broader life. That's kind of a process that I do. Yeah, I don't have any accountability coaches or anything like that. Um, but I think it depends. Like, I don't think there has to be so rigid. I think there can be different deadlines to just help you get going. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So I guess we're sort of at time ish. We can keep going a little bit longer, but to kind of start to wrap things up,
Yeah.
you know, you've sort of gone on this 10-year journey from sort of like a standard. I would, and I say that like, because I kind of see myself as having gone through it. It's sort of like you go through school into university, into the workforce, and end up in a kind of standard enough industry. Like I think, I worked in tech, you worked in tech. There's basically four or five different, professional services job types that a lot of our, contemporaries would have ended up in. And you are very much atypical to that mold. And you've done that for
Yeah.
10 years. So, what is your one major reflection when you think back on it all? Like, what is the big takeaway you'd like people to walk away with from this?
Um, well, I think it's hard to deliver one piece of advice, but you know, why did I get? I think my path happened is going to be very hard for somebody to replicate, and the exact path. But I think that tapping into what really emotionally drives you, and I know for me that what I want is freedom, and really everything that I've done is just to earn more freedom. And that's not what everybody wants. Some people want status, some people want recognition, some people want legacy, some people want different things. So I think really identifying what you want and then making sure that the path that you're taking lines up fundamentally with that. So I did the Fiverr because that gave me freedom to work online, work globally, from anywhere. I did Udemy because that would give me freedom. I never hired a team because that would take away my freedom, even though it could scale my business. And so, for example, I don't think I'd ever do a startup because I wouldn't want to have a team and I wouldn't want to have investors that I have to answer to. Now, that's just me. There's a lot of people where that's a very collaborative process and you could do incredible things that you'd never do on your own,
Yeah.
but it just wouldn't line up for me. And it wouldn't line up with what I'm good with. Like accountancy, I briefly did that, but I did past maths in school. It really made no sense to even go down that road.
Yeah.
And I think having the confidence to just say, this is what I want, this is who I am. I need to find a way to win without changing myself, and that's it. And you do need to look for those high demand, low supply opportunities, whether it's a platform, a topic, or like a feature, like you said. Um, and I think that's, yeah, lining all those things up can really get good results.
Nice. And finally, what's next for you? Like, what are you working on now? Is it more Udemy courses? I know you're doing some stuff on YouTube. Like, where do you go from here?
Well, unfortunately, the golden age of Udemy is probably over now, because as we said, it's no longer low supply. There's a lot of courses in there, so it's not as profitable as it used to be, although it is still good. So I'm at a little bit of a crossroads point myself. This year I've just taken a little bit of a step back, um, spending more time with the kids and more time just looking after myself. But you also have another problem when you get to the other side of that is suddenly you've got a little bit of money and you need to look after that. So you need to start investing in different things, and that becomes a bit of a part-time job. So I'm spending more time thinking about that, thinking about things like Bitcoin for me has become very interesting. And so I'm, writing down all my notes again, trying to make complex simple. And that's what just I've been sharing at. Yeah, so this it's interesting to do this type of podcast now to kind of bookend maybe the end of this chapter. I'm not sure really where I'm going next. So we'll see. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, no matter what, it's going to be exciting, and I'm going to be in the wings cheering you on. Daragh Walsh, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.